Success in Hollywood is a fragile thing. You can spend years building a reputation, climbing the ladder, then one terrible film later you're right back at the bottom again, wondering how it all went wrong. And if you want proof of that, just look at Taika Waititi. For years he was the guy who could do no wrong. He charmed his way into the big leagues, proved he could handle massive budgets, and looked unstoppable. But then he pushed it too far. The humour stopped serving the story, the ego crept into the frame, and the balance that made his work special tipped over into overkill. The same style that once made him popular became the very thing that broke him.
That's what you call ironic.
Taika Waititi was born in 1975 in Wellington, New Zealand to a Maori father and a Jewish mother. That cultural blend shaped his worldview and later his films, which often mixed humour with very real human pain. His first big moment came from the short film Two Cars One Night in 2003, which landed him an Academy Award nomination. From there he moved into feature films. Eagle vs Shark in 2007 was a bit of a misfire as it didn't really connect with audiences, but then came Boy in 2010. Set in New Zealand, it told the story of an 11-year-old kid idolising his absent father, only to discover the man's a bit of a loser. It was a personal story as it drew on Taika Waititi's own childhood experiences and became the highest grossing film in New Zealand. But Taika's rise to international fame came from two films. What We Do in the Shadows in 2014, a vampire mockumentary that became a worldwide cult hit, and Hunt for the Wilderpeople, a survival comedy that scored both critical and commercial success. Those back-to-back hits made him more than just a name in New Zealand. They established him on the global stage, and it wasn't long before the Hollywood machine came knocking. By 2016, Marvel had a problem. The Thor franchise was the runt of the MCU litter. The first two movies were bland and forgettable, particularly the second one, and even in the Avengers films, Thor's character was seen as the boring one. Something had to change, so they rolled the dice on Taika Waititi. With Thor Ragnarök in 2017, the franchise finally got the shake-up it needed. However, it's important to recognise that Taika Waititi didn't write the story. That was handled by Eric Pearson, Craig Kyle and Christopher Yost. The plot framework was already built, but Taika brought it to life. His style, his timing, his eye for tone, these elements gave the movie an energy the franchise had always been missing. One of the best examples of Taika's style carrying over from his earlier films into Ragnarok is the sequence where Thor meets Doctor Strange. It plays like a comedy sketch. Thor's beer mug refills itself, Doctor Strange teleports him around the sanctum, Loki's been falling
For 30 minutes!
Yet only moments later, Thor and Loki are standing with Odin in Norway. The jokes drop away, the tone shifts, and suddenly you're in a quiet, emotional farewell as Odin dies. That restraint is why Ragnarok connected with so many people, and it's what made Taika Waititi successful in his earlier films. Emboldened by his newfound Marvel success, Taika was seemingly untouchable. In 2019, he took quite a risk with JoJo Rabbit, a World War II comedy about a young boy obsessed with Nazi ideology, whose imaginary friend just happened to be Adolf Hitler, played by Waititi himself. The risk paid off though, because it won him the Academy Award for Best Adapted Screenplay. So by the end of the 2010s, he was at the peak of his powers. The man could do no wrong. However, all of that was about to change. By the time Thor Love and Thunder rolled around in 2022, everything seemed to be lining up perfectly. Ragnarok had been a huge success, Taika was coming off an Oscar win, and Marvel believed they had found the magic formula to keep the Thor franchise alive. So of course they brought him back. On paper it was the winning ticket. The man who saved Thor was back and now had even more creative freedom. But that freedom turned out to be the problem. In Ragnarok, Waititi had worked within a framework shaped by Marvel's writers and producers. With Love and Thunder, he was also the co-writer, and this time there were no guardrails. All the quirks that once made his films successful were dialed up to 11, and the result was a flop so bad it trashed his reputation. The first and most obvious casualty was the tone of the movie. Love and Thunder played everything for laughs. Every dramatic moment, every emotional beat, every shred of tension got buried under a joke. Jane is literally dying of cancer, yet the film constantly undermines it with comedy. A bizarre contrast when you remember how Odin's death in Ragnarok was given space to breathe. It's like the film is afraid of sincerity, and it wasn't just audiences who noticed. Chris Hemsworth himself admitted that the movie just became too silly. When your lead actor thinks that their own film is a joke, you've got a problem.
No shit!
The writing was just as messy. Without the guardrails of a structured script, the movie collapses into half-baked ideas. Take Gore, for example. On paper, he's one of Marvel's most interesting villains, a man betrayed by the gods he worshipped, driven to slaughter them out of grief and anger. That's a story with some real dramatic weight to it. But no, instead of exploring any of that, the film would rather show us Thor constantly trying to reassure Stormbreaker like some sort of jealous girlfriend that Mjolnir, his old weapon, won't come between them.
That is without a doubt the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Meanwhile, characters like Korg, who worked in Ragnarök because he was used in small doses, suddenly dominate Love and Thunder. He narrates the film, constantly interrupts scenes, and even survives being killed so he can keep telling jokes. It's a clear example of Taika pushing his own material into the spotlight at the expense of the story. Visually, the film was no better. Sloppy CGI made the movie look more suited to a Disney Plus show than a $200 million blockbuster. It got so bad that Waititi himself was laughing at how bad the effects were in interviews with Tessa Thompson.
Does that look real?
In that particular shot, no, actually.
Love and Thunder exposed his limits. Where his earlier work balanced comedy with heartfelt emotion, this film drowned everything in jokes. The very style that he was once praised for had turned into the thing that brought him down. And if anyone thought that this was just a one-off shit the bed sort of thing, the next film would put that idea to rest. If Love and Thunder was the film that wrecked Taika Waititi's reputation, then Next Goal Wins was the one that confirmed it. The movie had been in development for years and Taika was attached to it long before Love and Thunder released, but when it did come out in 2023 it felt like more of the same. On paper, the story of American Samoa's famously hopeless football team had the potential to be a light-hearted, uplifting underdog story. In practice it was predictable, bland, and instantly forgettable. The offbeat humour that once made Waititi stand out now felt stale, and neither critics nor audiences cared. Instead of being his redemption, it only cemented the truth that his bag of tricks had run out. To be fair, if Next Goal Wins had come out before Love and Thunder, it probably wouldn't have mattered much. It would have just been another forgettable blip in his career. But because it followed Love and Thunder, it felt like confirmation, proof that the wheels had really come off. So with all that in mind, you might be thinking, come on, surely just one catastrophically bad movie isn't enough to ruin someone's career, right? Now, whether that's fair or not, the evidence speaks for itself. Since Thor Love and Thunder, Taika Waititi hasn't really done much. A 4-minute short film about a boy and an octopus, 2 episodes of Time Bandits, and a few producing credits on some movies you've probably never even heard of. His Star Wars movie has been stuck in development since 2020, and Marvel have turned once again to the Russo brothers for Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars. A new Judge Dredd project has been announced with Taika attached, but nobody's exactly thrilled. His name isn't a selling point anymore, it's a red flag, and let's be honest, it's just a sign of how far he's fallen, taking on projects nobody really cares about.
Just saying.
In the end, Taika Waititi was undone by the very things that once made him popular. His style, his humour, his personality. Without restraint, they consumed everything else. What once made him stand out now makes him insufferable. The industry has moved on, so have audiences, and Taika Waititi has been left behind, and that's the blunt truth of it.